Hi, I'm Gordon Raquel from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create film courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com and follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview film professionals to discuss their work, and this is made possible by our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. This week, I'm joined by editors Adam Kurnitz and Affonso Gonçalves, the editors of Todd Haynes' new documentary, The Velvet Underground. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
My first question, I don't know if it's a controversial question, because sometimes when I've talked to editors, I'll refer to something as a style, and they're like, well, I don't cut styles. But when I watch this documentary, there's very much references to the art movements that the Velvet Underground were a part of. And it sort of shifts over the entire film. So what were the discussions like with Todd to figuring out the look of this film?
You want to go, Fonz? You want me to go?
You can go.
Well, very early, before we started cutting it all, we had I met with Todd. Fonz already spoken to Todd. Todd and I had never met, so we met in a coffee shop in Manhattan, and he brought tons of material on the Velvet Underground. He brought this really thick book. It was totally marked up. He was extremely prepared and had a particular vision. And we talked about split screens in that meeting. It wasn't, he didn't specifically say, I want things in certain ways. He did talk about Chelsea Girls. That was one specific thing. And I guess he did have some drawings of, sort of like frames of reference that we could look at as how he wanted frames. He wanted interview, offset to the left, offset to the right, things like that, so he had the black tower next to it or something like that. So those conversations happened very early, but as far as editing is concerned and style, I think when you're editing a movie about a known character or a band, you sort of have to use the right tool for that job. Mm-hmm. So the style has to develop that is, yes, it's part of your director's vision, but it also has to be somehow related to the subject, maybe even more so than the director's vision, if what you want to do is immerse the audience into the experience of who the subject is, who the band is, that kind of thing. So we talking about the right tool for the job, and this style we thought was the right tool.
Well, but it was a conversation we had, which is not. It's not something that naturally happens when any other film. Like, let's talk about the style of the film, unless it's inherent to how they're shooting or like the idea. But this was something that we always had in mind that we could use. We could play with styles plural too, not just a style of this is gonna be cut that way, but visually is gonna have to have a vision, a voice somehow.
Well, it seemed to have an arc, right? Like, it seemed you started with the split screens and then it sort of shifted out of that. So how did you guys get to that sort of final look, I guess you could say, or arc for the look?
I mean, it has to do with the arc of the story. Once Warhol leaves and Ko leaves, that kind of language, and the time is passing, that kind of language sort of dissipates a little bit. And we still use very much the experimental films, but they're shifting to a different kind of language. So it's kind of, the film is telling the story and we are following with the way we're using the footage.
Now, you also, like, you're working with a band that's very famous for its music, and in the first part of their career, it's very much sort of tone driven, or I guess sound experiments. So what was your approach to sound for the documentary?
So for the sound, drone was obviously extremely important. The way the film opens in black, and there's this kind of just drone that moves around the room. I sort of refer to that as a warning, sort of like let the audience know you're about to be assaulted, you know, by this sound, by this feeling, by this tone. So we used a lot of drone. We used a lot of stems from Velvet Underground songs. We were lucky enough to have the stems. So we kind of used those a little bit as score in the first hour of the film, where there kind of is no Velvet Underground music in that first hour. But we were able to use, you know, the piano from Waiting for the Man, or, you know, the viola from Black Angel Death Song, or something like that, to carry you through and sort of keep you in the experience of the Velvet Underground without actually listening to the Velvet Underground. And, you know, the visual style helped with that as well. But also we had Leslie Schatz, who took some of our ideas and just exploded them and sort of made Fonz and I look very good. You know, not to say that there wasn't a bed, but Leslie came in and really just did his thing and made it such, I mean, it's such a beautiful sound design that he did.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's so interesting because, you know, like when you see that sort of transition from that to them being, I don't want to say pop, but more accessible, I guess you could say, there's like a shift in the sound as well. Now, in terms of, you know, like one of the things, usually a documentary is going to be focusing on one person or a couple of people, but we're focusing on this band. And in this band, there are some big personalities, right? And so how do you find a balance between them so that, you know, one doesn't take over the doc or become sort of the primary focus?
I mean, the thing that's missing, obviously, is Lou Reed is not with us anymore, unfortunately. But we got lucky to get John Cale, got Mo. So they're become the people telling the story. So, but we had to find balance in terms of Lou Reed is such an important part, like is him and John. So we have to be creative with the footage, with the interviews that he had that existed from TV shows or other documentaries, and use that way. And that's always trying to find the balance of, like, we know we want to hear when John Cale has an opinion about something, we want to hear what Lou has to say as well. And same with Sterling. I mean, Sterling was probably the trickiest because there's not much in terms of him, interviews with him. But yeah, we want to give, of course, John and Lou, but also try to give voice to Mo and Sterling.
Now, what would you say was one of the tougher scenes for you to edit for the two of you?
Tough is not a good word. I feel like it was such a pleasure to edit that I mean, I guess there were, I mean, cutting a documentary is so difficult that it's hard from moment one. But I can't think of one particular section that was, you know, it was difficult. So the section when we get to the factory and it's the heroine is playing, I love that section. It might be my favorite, or one of my favorite sections of the film. But what is so hard about cutting that scene is that when you're cutting to music, you follow the drummer or you follow the bass player, and then you're cutting to the beat, right? But what is happening in Heroine, the drums are offbeat, going crazy. They fall out for a while. Mo loses her ability to keep up, and she actually stops drumming for a little while, and then it pops back in. So there was a long period where we kept looking at a certain section of it and feeling like, this feels off. What is going on? And we realized that we had to follow different parts of the song to keep you in rhythm. So at some points you are following drum, at some points you're following the rhythm guitar, which seems to be the most consistent throughout. And then when the song just breaks down at the end, it goes crazy, you have to figure out where the rhythm is. So rhythmically, that was the most difficult thing I had to do, was finding the spot where the beat dropped.
Mhm.
You know, if you break up the Velvet Underground in your mind and say, oh, I'm going to listen to the drums right now and hear what happens, or I'm going to listen to vocals, it can drive you completely insane because they're all doing different things at once that amounts to one amazing thing. So that became very difficult.
Interesting. How about yourself, Affonso?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree with Adam. It wasn't, there was some stuff that was challenging, but the challenging in and of itself was fun, because it'd be like, I don't know how to do this. It's like, oh, I have all of this information at my disposal. The fact that we didn't have so much, there is no live footage of them playing stuff like that, just becomes, it's an incentive to be creative and try different things. I mean, it was difficult to find, I think the end of the film was difficult, just to find the right tone to be like, okay, how much information we're going to give, how much we're not, and what's the very end. And it was interesting because, and Adam tells the story well, that we didn't really know how to end the film. And then it come almost like at the same time, we had the exact same idea. The film has to end with the Bataclan, the 1972 of them playing. And it was just like a aha moment that interesting just happened at the exact same time. He called me and he was telling me the story, be like, wait, I was about to tell you the same thing. It was like, okay.
And we even chose the same song to use. It was really amazing.
Was the same, yeah.
You know, the original.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the original end of the film, as it was cut, I think I cut the original end, and it was this whole section of people justifying the greatness of the Velvet Underground, and they're like, weren't they great? And didn't this look at how the world changed because the Velvet Underground occurred? You know, and then we watched it together. I watched it with Fonz. And, you know, something magical happens when you watch with another audience member. Mm-hmm. And in your mind, you're just like, this is totally wrong. And that's when I think you were at the airport, Fonz. I called you on the phone and you said, I had the exact same idea. And yeah, it's just completely amazing that we had the same thought. And of course, Todd was like, we can't justify how great this band is. That's a horrible idea. That's what every documentary does. And we're just not going to do that. We don't need to do that, you know? So we found this sort of what I think is this bittersweet, beautiful ending that sort of you just trickle off and you're just like, isn't it sad that this didn't continue on, or, you know, didn't tell you how to feel about it.
And also, I mean, there was a, I mean, I'm not going to say it was a difficult part of editing, but there are more stories about the band. Obviously, the band, Lou left and the band kept going, you know. Yeah. Doug Hughes' brother came in and they just went. And people ask us, it's like, wait, but there's more stories. And be like, yeah, we know. There's a conscious decision to be like, that's where we're going to stop telling the story. If John is out, if Lou is out, as far as we are concerned, the band doesn't really, is not the same. It's just not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So now, you know, you mentioned this, Adam, that editing documentaries is very difficult. So when you're sort of faced with that mound of footage, how do you like to approach your first build or sort of discovery of the structure?
Yeah, well, the first thing I do is I watch all the footage. I mean, which sounds obvious, but when you're given 600 hours, that means you're going to take a few months kind of not delivering anything, just watching. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really important. And you know what some editors do is they start choosing selects right away, and they start naming things and organizing things. And I think that's a mistake. I think, you know, everyone has their process. I'm sure there are great editors that do that. But I think you have to have the whole thing swimming around in your mind before you could start making those decisions. And after I watch, I go back to the very beginning and I start the process of watching again, except my mandate in that moment is to cut out at least 70% of the footage so I could get it down to a more manageable size. And when it's at a really manageable size, let's say 10 to 20 hours, I start creating topic sequences. So I have a topic sequence called Lou's Childhood, and everything that is said about Lou's childhood is in that section. And I have I think for the Velvet Underground, we had like 125 topic sequences. And what you could do with these sequences is you could quickly build a scene out of them, and you start to build the structure of the film. And not just that, I've built these selects, and if someone wants to find something about a particular subject, they could just go in and say, oh, it's everything that's said about this is in this section. Let me take a look at it so we could talk about what's there, what I think is missing, that kind of thing. But the attack of so much footage almost has to be mathematical. Otherwise, you're just going to drive yourself completely crazy, you know? So you have to have these mandates that you set for yourself. And just really, in my mind, I think if I don't keep to this mandate, I am a failure, a horrible failure. And I keep that pressure on the whole time. And if the thought in my head, if there's one minuscule thought in my mind that says, should you cut this out? The answer is yes, you should just cut it out. I mean, you could always go back to it. But you just have to make really, if you have 600 hours and you have to make 2 hours, you just have to make really, really firm decisions.
Yeah. How about yourself, Affonso?
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say, like Todd, it helps that we're working with Todd, that he's both incredibly creative in his ideas and daring and wants to explore and experiment, but he's very precise. Even the way he approaches his narrative films, it's really about discipline and precision. You choose like the very best, the way he, if it's on a performance, somebody performs, you just really watch it, come through, find the very best of everybody, and then that's when you start. You don't like start putting stuff together till you find that the best of everything. And I think that is the same thing. I think that's what Adam's saying. You sift through till you find really the top of what you want to use. Of course, everything there exists. You're not cutting out anything. Like
it's all in the. I did want to say that my process of doing what I just said that I normally do, in a way, did actually break down a little for this particular film, because the footage that we were using, these beautiful avant-garde films and avant-garde animations, we really needed to be able to see all of those, so I did make selects, but I also had incredibly long 11-hour timelines that I set aside of just all of these films, that because choosing selects from those, it's almost impossible because the footage is so beautiful. So you needed to be able to sort of see it all as well. So yes, there were selects mostly with interview, but the other stuff I did sort of keep siloed in its entirety, so it could be viewed.
Now, did you go to, because Andy Warhol famously did 12 hours of the Empire State Building, 8 hours of A Friend Sleeping, that type of thing? Did you actually go to those films as well and pull selects, or you didn't sit through the whole thing?
Those are not available.
Yeah,
I mean, you could say there are sections of this film that I want. Can you send them to me? But I don't think the Warhol Foundation is going to send you 24 hours of the Empire State Building, or I did say, we want the moment when we want some moments in day. We want the moment when the lights go on. That movie is like, you think nothing happens, and it's like a soccer game. When a goal happens, you're like, oh my God, someone scored a goal. It's like the Andy Warhol films are like, oh my God, someone just blinked or someone just moved. Yeah. It's, so you want those moments where things actually change,
Wow, what a dig, man.
Not a dig, it's beautiful,
Wait, you think it's like a dig at soccer or a dig at
Warhol?
Oh, well, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I think of soccer as a Warhol film in the best possible way.
That's what I think.
So
that's what I think.
biased.
Yeah, that's what I think.
If you're a fan of soccer, did you see the Canadian-Mexico game?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that I feel sorry for those players. That was a cold-looking game.
Yeah, he was.
How did you guys like to work together, since everyone's going to have their different approaches to building a cut?
I mean, Adam has way more experience in documentary than I do. and I kind of follow his lead, his discipline, and the way he functions. My brain is scattered when the way the way I work is it's a little different. So we had worked together on Gimme Danger, the Jim Jarmusch film about Iggy and the Stooges, and there was something kind of similar because I was finishing a movie, and Adam started working, and then I joined in. It was the same with the Velvet Underground. So he kind of sets the world, and I joined, and we kind of split scenes. And it's like, okay, you're gonna do this, I'm gonna do those things. This one was a little bit different on Velvet Underground because also Todd was cutting. He had his own Avid, so the three of us, we were working sections, and we pass it along to the other person, and then we kind of do like a round robin of everything, working a little bit on it. But that's kind of the way we did it.
Did you? Because you mentioned you've worked in other, in fiction as well. So is there something you learned from editing fiction projects that you found really useful in cutting documentaries?
I'm sure. I can't really think of it like right away. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I feel like I'm better to answer that question because I got to observe fonts, right? And I know what goes on in documentary, and I know what most documentary editors do. I learned how to work with sound from fonts. I think that a lot of documentary editors sort of like ignore sound and just bring it to a sound designer and they do it. Sometimes you're layering, the better documentary editors are layering sound effects and sound design. But watching Fonz work with sound on Gimme Danger, the way he was so attentive to every detail, every sound being represented, and when to not use sound and what that does to the viewer, it changed the way I edit forever, And I also want to say that I think it's much easier for a documentary film editor to make the leap to narrative than it is for a narrative editor to make the leap to documentary. It's just such a different thing. And Fonz is a real artist and jumped in. I remember his first day on Gimme Danger, he cut a scene and I was just like, holy shit, man. It was just completely incredible, the scene that he cut. And the way he slipped into it so easily was really, really amazing to watch. It's not that common. It's not, you're welcome. He's not a nice person. He's a very terrible person, but he's a really, really good editor. I'm just kidding. It's I wish I could cut everything with Fonz. Yeah,
I feel the same. Yeah, no, I learned. I mean, there was no way I could do this by myself. It's impossible. It would be impossible. Both this and Gimme Danger. If Adam wasn't there, I couldn't do it. I don't have that capacity. But what I have to say, what's great too, is that we have a great time.
Really great time.
We really like enjoying working together, and we usually have a fun time, just talking about things and sort of geeking out and being fans and it's like, how can we push this? How try to find humor in things too. I think that's yeah.
Now I have one last question that I like to ask everyone I interview. We've been in this pandemic for over a year now, and depending on what's happening and where you are in the world, you're in or out of quarantine. And during that time, a lot of people discovered streaming networks and started watching a lot of streaming shows. Is there a movie or a show you discovered over the last year that people should check out if they're locked inside?
The first thing I can think of is Small Axe, the Steve McQueen show on Amazon. Oh my God, it's just completely incredible. I think it's 6 episodes, but each one is its own hour-length short film.
Oh, wow.
And they're just beautiful. Yeah, it was completely I mean, he's such a great filmmaker. And what he brought to television was incredible.
Wow. And that was on Amazon Prime?
It's on Amazon, yeah.
Amazon's got to start promoting their stuff better. It's driving me nuts because I keep hearing, I should check that out.
I know.
I think on my end, what I discovered, I mean, I had it before, but what I really watch a lot was Mubi.
Hmm.
You know, the website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much like new interesting stuff there that I completely fell in love and watch a ton of it in the
Is there
pandemic.
one in particular we should check out?
I mean, it's so much. I can't off the top of my head. I can't think of. It was just discovering different films, and I mean, you go there, you can get lost so easily. You know, there are filmmakers that I never even heard of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview this week, guys. And that's it for our show this week. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com. And of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I also want to thank you guys again for joining us. And of course, our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. I'm Gordon Raquel. Thanks for watching.